Hello and welcome to Focus Asia from our studios in Hong Kong. I'm Jennifer Lee. Our program tonight begins with a legacy from the Vietnam War. The chemical defoliant Agent Orange was used extensively in Vietnam by the U.S. military to expose enemy troops in the jungle. It wasn't meant to be harmful to humans, but Agent Orange contained an unintended poison, and one that's still proving to be truly deadly decades after the war ended. Susan Yu has the story.
In the last few years, many of them have died.
The war is over, but when we talk about its victims, they are the ones who are suffering.
There's no doubt that Vietnam is one of the most affected countries in the world.
Tran Van Hoan is 8 years old. A deformed rib cage has left Juan with a gaping chest cavity. Corrective surgery is out of the question since he's too young and his family too poor to pay for any operation. Nguyen Van Long is 10 years old. He suffers from hydrocephaly, a disease that causes the head to swell twice its normal size. They and more than 100 others are learning to cope with their disabilities at this home for the disabled in Hanoi. The children who live in this so-called friendship village are struggling with the legacy of Agent Orange. Nguyen Khai Hung runs the home, which is sponsored by veterans groups around the world.
Of course, it isn't easy dealing with this situation. My work can be hard because we are working with these children for the long term, and every day that we see them we feel very sorry and even guilty, because those not affected by Agent Orange don't have difficulties like they do. We just try our best to reduce their suffering.
During the Vietnam War, no one knew that the poisonous dioxin-containing chemical that rained down over the country would take its toll on a generation born well after the end of the conflict. The toxic cocktail was named after the orange-striped barrels, which stored the reddish-brown liquid. The U.S. military used Agent Orange as a defoliant to destroy mangrove forests and jungles in an attempt to deny Viet Cong troops cover.
I saw many airplanes in the sky, and then the whole area became foggy, and people started sneezing and having runny noses. It was hard to breathe.
The U.S. stopped spraying the herbicide in 1971 after it was found to cause cancer in rats and deformities in animal fetuses. But Lieutenant General Vu Xuan Nguyen says Agent Orange continues to claim casualties.
War veterans make up about 70% of all Agent Orange victims. We believe there are at least 1 million people affected, so that means around 700,000 veterans.
And what about their children? Vietnam's Veterans Association says the offspring of ex-soldiers also suffer from a host of cancers, diseases, deformities, and neurological disorders.
The war was fought a long time ago, but for those affected by Agent Orange, they are still struggling with their health and their bodies. They can't move on until this bitter legacy is dealt with.
For Vietnam, that's hard to do, being one of the poorest countries in Asia.
In order to improve the situation, we have to take lots of measures, but they are expensive, and Vietnam has limited resources.
The International Red Cross has highlighted the problem as a humanitarian issue.
The Red Cross would like to immediately help Agent Orange victims. Even if they know they will die soon, they lose hope when they know there's no help on the way. We get about $3 million every year, and if you divide that up amongst 1 million victims, that means only $3 per person. That's hardly enough.
In contrast, American Vietnam veterans affected by the herbicide have made inroads in their campaign for compensation. In 1999, 20,000 American veterans sued the manufacturers of Agent Orange and won a judgment of $180 million. The U.S. government has also awarded compensation and disability benefits to nearly 8,000 American Vietnam veterans suffering diseases associated with Agent Orange. Washington has yet to officially recognize Agent Orange victims in Vietnam.
I think that's going to be one of the very thorny issues that's going to have to be worked out, and that's going to have to be worked out on a government-to-government level. We in our organization certainly think that there should be fair and equitable compensation or ability to resolve the health problems in this population in this country.
However, at an unprecedented conference on the defoliant in Hanoi, Washington agreed to conduct research with the Vietnamese government on its effects. The study will focus on miscarriages, congenital deformities, neurological disorders, and cancers.
We have focused our research on diseases and defects. For instance, with women who give birth to deformed babies, we look at their genes to see if it's hereditary and research the population of those living in the area and compare that to a population not exposed or affected by Agent Orange.
Grant Bruce works for an environmental research company that has been helping Vietnam assess Agent Orange contamination. He believes there may be up to a dozen hotspots in the country.
It appears to be on military installations, and there were a number of key sites in Vietnam where the U.S. military stored these chemicals. Da Nang is one, of course. Bien Hoa Airport near Ho Chi Minh City is another.
Just outside Ho Chi Minh City, researchers were startled to discover that 95% of residents had alarming levels of dioxin in their bloodstreams. Some even had 200 times the average amount. Scientists believe the effects of Agent Orange have passed from contaminated soil and water sources into the food chain and finally on to unsuspecting victims. The number of children born with serious health problems relating to Agent Orange has been so large that the government set up nearly a dozen special schools for them. As researchers continue to look into the effects of the dioxin, there are those on the ground dealing with the tragic consequences of Agent Orange head-on. It's here where volunteers work with children afflicted by this legacy of war. In the Friendship Village, there's also vocational training to try and help them through what will surely be a difficult life.
The purpose of having the children and the veterans here is to provide some kind of therapy, to try and help them improve their health, and give the children a chance to be normal, to know they have the right to play like normal children, and have the right to be educated.
While Washington and Hanoi's joint research on the defoliant will take years to complete, few Agent Orange victims have time on their side. They can only hope that the men of science will look at the evidence before them and realize the only proof they need are those living with the legacy.